You've probably been told a pretty simple story about how human civilization began, but what if that whole story is just wrong? Today, we are diving into a discovery so incredible it's been called the 0 point of history, a 12,000-year-old site that completely rewrites everything we thought we knew. For the longest time, the story of how we got here, how civilization happened, it all seemed pretty straightforward. It followed this neat, logical path that you almost definitely learned in school. It made perfect sense, right up until it didn't. Okay, so this is the classic textbook story, right? Step 1, humans invent farming. Step 2, farming lets us stop wandering around and settle down into villages. Step 3, those villages get bigger, more organized, and turn into complex societies. And only then, step 4, once we're all settled and well-fed, do we get around to building huge temples. Makes sense, right? Survival first, big ideas later. But what if that entire chain of events is completely backwards? All right, so this is where everything gets turned on its head. Deep in Şanlıurfa, Turkey, archaeologists stumbled upon a site that doesn't just poke holes in that old model, it absolutely shatters it. And it's called Göbekli Tepe. Now, this place was actually first spotted way back in the 60s, but it was basically dismissed. Everyone just thought, it's probably a medieval cemetery, and moved on. It wasn't until decades later, in 1994, that a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt took a closer look and realized, whoa, hang on a second, those aren't gravestones. They were the tips of massive ancient pillars, part of something way older and way more important than anyone could have imagined. I mean, the age here is just... it's hard to wrap your head around it. We're talking 12,000 years old. And just to be clear, this isn't just a little bit old. It's so ancient, it forces us to completely reset our timeline of human history. Okay, let's really put this into perspective, because the numbers are just wild. Göbekli Tepe is about 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It's 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now think about that for a second. The gap in time between Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge is bigger than the gap between Stonehenge and you right now. So, this incredible age immediately brings up a massive question, a total paradox, really. If it's that old, who in the world could have possibly built it? And how? See, at the time Göbekli Tepe was being built, this is how we lived. We were all hunter-gatherers. We hadn't figured out farming yet. We hadn't invented pottery. We didn't have cities. We were living in small, nomadic groups, constantly on the move, just following the animals and the seasons. And yet, to build something like Göbekli Tepe, you need the exact opposite of that. You need a huge, organized workforce. You need some kind of social structure with leaders and planners. You need incredible engineering skills and artistic talent. And most of all, you need a shared belief system powerful enough to bring everyone together for a project this massive. These are all things we thought only came with settled agricultural life, which wasn't supposed to exist for thousands more years. And this is the big reveal, the thing that flips the script. It was hunter-gatherers, not settled farmers, who built the world's first massive temples. Nomadic people were quarrying and moving limestone pillars that weighed tons, completely turning that neat little story of civilization right on its head. And we're not talking about just a bunch of crude rocks either. The signature feature of this place are these incredible T-shaped monoliths, and they are clearly meant to be stylized people. You can see carvings of arms, hands, even loincloths. It's like they were creating these giant stone beings, maybe representing their ancestors, or maybe humanity's very first gods. But the story of what this place actually was, well, that's still unfolding. The first theory was that it was basically a sacred meeting place, like a prehistoric cathedral for nomads. But as always, new evidence is making the story a lot more complicated. So the archaeologist who really uncovered this, Klaus Schmidt, he came up with this revolutionary idea. He famously said, first came the temple, then the city. His theory was that it was the shared desire to build this amazing place that actually forced people to settle down and invent farming, just to feed the massive workforce. So in his view, religion was actually the spark that ignited civilization. But now, things are getting even more interesting. Archaeologists have since found what look like actual domestic buildings nearby. They found a crazy sophisticated water system with cisterns that could hold thousands and thousands of liters. They found tons of grinding stones for processing grain. All this evidence points to the fact that this wasn't just some festival ground people visited once in a while. People were living here, year-round. And here's maybe the most mind-blowing part of all. Göbekli Tepe wasn't some isolated wonder. It turns out it was just the tip of a massive prehistoric iceberg. Yeah, Göbekli Tepe is just one piece of this huge network of sites that we're now calling taş tepelers, which just means stone hills. A nearby site called Karahan Tepe has similar pillars, even statues. There are at least 10 more sites in the area. This wasn't a one-off. We're looking at an entire lost civilization, a huge connected culture with a shared vision that lasted for thousands of years before it just vanished. Which brings us to one of the biggest mysteries of all. If this place was so important, so central to their world for over 1,500 years, why did they bury it? I mean, on purpose. Yeah, this wasn't a catastrophe or an invasion. The evidence shows they deliberately, painstakingly covered the whole thing with tons and tons of dirt. It's almost like they were creating a time capsule. Maybe it was some final great ritual, a way of putting a powerful idea to rest. And it's kind of ironic, right? Because that final act, that burial, is the only reason we can see it so perfectly preserved today. So that leaves us with the ultimate question, the one we might never fully answer. What was it all for? What did these ancient people believe? We don't have any writing, of course. All we have are these clues etched into the stone. The carvings are full of predators, lions, snakes, scorpions, not the animals they were eating every day. The pillars themselves, are they ancestors, gods? We just don't know. We see some strange evidence pointing to a kind of skull cult, and even statues that seem to have been ritually killed before the site was buried. It all points to a really dramatic and complex spiritual world. In the end, Göbekli Tepe doesn't really give us any easy answers. What it does is force us to ask much, much bigger questions. It suggests that this human drive to come together, to build, to create meaning, that's not some luxury that comes after we've figured out survival. Perhaps that impulse is what made us human to begin with. The need for the temple may have been the very thing that built the city. And that is a story that truly changes our own.